Call meeting to order and start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does anybody have any announcements? I don't actually have any tonight.
Slow down, Irvington.
Slow down.
Slow down. That's an announcement.
I have one, actually. I'll end up repeating it during my liaison report, but registration for the dog walk pilot program in Matheson Park starts tomorrow, I think. Eric, do you remember?
I don't remember.
Just email?
I think it's tomorrow.
Yeah, so people can sign up at the rec department. I'll have more information there.
Perfect. Connie Kehoe is away this week, so she's not here. She said she might actually dial in via video. I hope for her sake she does not, since she's on vacation, but she said she'd watch with the beach in the background, so it's not so bad. On to correspondence. We have two from Kathy Kaufman. Dear Irvington Board of Trustees, Mr. Shumper, Mr. Ochino, I'm thrilled to hear that the village is exploring creating a dog park. Irvington offers many social opportunities for families with children, but few for those at later stages of life, so a dog walk where dog owners can meet up with others would be a great addition. That said, Irvington does have a problem with dog waste, and I wonder if you might be able to an opportunity to change our dog license requirements to require participation in a local dog DNA registry. I believe the cost of testing and registering the DNA is typically rolled into dog license. Then you can figure out whose dog waste it was. Considered. Irvington Board of Trustees, Mr. Schaffler, I understand that you're currently examining the parking regulations enforced in the Main Street Business District. I'm going to bring your attention to what appears to be an exacerbating parking problem on at least one street. Use of residential streets for parking multiple and oversized commercial vehicles. Of course, the conversations I've had with residents about traffic issues in December. A number of South Ecker Street residents mentioned that businesses whose owners live on South Ecker use the street to park multiple oversized commercial vehicles on a 24/7 basis. The complaints are twofold. The trucks use a disproportionate amount of scarce parking spaces. Because of their size, when parked, the trucks block views and light from the street-facing windows of local homes. I defer to your expertise on how to address the issue. Apart from throwing out these two potential solutions, prohibit parking of all oversized vehicles on side streets off Main Street except during active loading and unloading. Consider prohibiting and restricting the parking of commercial vehicles on the side streets off Main Street, perhaps by imposing a 2-hour time limit. Thank you in advance, Kathy Kaufman, 28 North Ecker Street, Irvington. And that's all the correspondence we have. Public comment. Anybody have any public comment off the bat? Chris?
I do. Hi, Kristen Wall, 58 West Clinton Avenue. I fully support the accessory apartment amendment. The spirit, all of it's great. Except I stumbled on something when I was researching something completely different about zoning boards of appeals. And it seems like most of the other codes use their zoning, actually all the ones I saw, use the zoning board of appeals as the guiding body. The body that gives the license and that it's in their purview. And so I just wanted to check that maybe we want to make sure that the planning board is the way to go. I couldn't find any legislation, anybody else's code that has the planning board as the guiding body. They all seem to think that it's in the zoning board of appeals domain. So I just wanted to check and, maybe we should just look into that and make sure we've got that right. Okay, but I mean, the spirit is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yeah, I submitted a letter to the board of trustees, but I guess it didn't make it onto the agenda, so I would like the opportunity to read that.
Sure.
If I could. I guess I'm writing to you as a member of the Irvington Pace Car Committee.
Can you have your name first?
My name is Eric Foley. I'm a part of the Irvington Pace Car Committee. And about a year ago, a group of community members, including myself, got together to start the Irvington Pace Car program to try to help our community deal with unsafe traffic conditions. During this time, I've spent dozens of hours at various community events talking to people about traffic safety and signing them up to take the Pace Car Pledge. In taking the pledge, community members agree to obey all traffic laws and display a Pace Car magnet on their cars. That magnet is our currency. In the beginning of January, a Pace Car member caught someone stealing a Pace Car magnet from their car. The Irvington Police Department was able to identify this person who stole the magnet. Right around this time, I happened to see this person as he was dropping off my neighbor's son, and I share a driveway with my neighbor. And this person told me that he was in a contest with some of his friends to see who could steal more pace car magnets. After hearing this, I followed up with Chief Cerrone, hoping to find out more about the stolen magnets. How many kids were stealing magnets? How many magnets did they steal? Were these kids also stealing our Slow Down Irvington signs, which were mysteriously disappearing also? And Chief Cerrone just repeatedly refused to answer my questions. And I don't understand Chief Cerrone's unwillingness to not brief the Pace Car program on the whereabouts of the stolen magnets. I would really like to get the magnets back to the people who contributed money to our program and who proudly displayed the magnets on the back of their cars. I do not understand the Chief unwillingness to do this, and I'm calling on the Board of Trustees to please use their influence to urge the Chief Cerrone to inform the Pace Car Committee how we can get our magnets back to the rightful owners of magnets.
Okay, we'll follow up with the chief on that. Any other public comment? All right, on to the consent agenda, which includes minutes of the village board and budget transfers. Any questions on these? Otherwise, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Got a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Actually, wait a minute.
Yep, hold on.
I'm sorry. There was an overtime charge, I think as part of one of the budget transfers, and I was just wondering if that was related to, I can't remember the shoot, the film shoot that went into, like, way past.
Drone train?
Yeah.
There wasn't that
Oh, the
it was a
TV
blind
one?
spot one. It was a blind spot shoot up on Field Drive, right?
Field Terrace.
Field Terrace.
But I guess I just wanted to ask, in the case that there's police overtime related to a film shoot that extends beyond what the film permit allowed, can we bill the production company for that?
They pay everything that's used, so if there is an extended window,
Okay.
they pay that. They pay the actual charges
Okay.
for the officers.
Okay. So
we
if,
recovered everything from that, and I believe a second day of filming permit fee for that.
awesome. Okay. Thank you.
So I think we're approved with a comment. Public hearing, open public
Did we
hearing.
vote on it?
I think we did.
Yes, you
We
did.
did.
No, we
Oh,
seconded
second.
it.
Let's vote again.
So, well, you already moved and seconded it, so you just.
Yeah.
did it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay.
You got it? All right. Public hearing to consider a local law amending the zoning code to permit accessory apartments and one-family dwellings subject to special permit. I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Emma, Janice, Mary Ann, what's the latest on this one?
Well, I can go through the provisions of it, but Janice, it came from the Housing Committee that Janice chaired, so maybe
Yes,
you want to...
so I'd just like to say this is a very happy night to be here having a public hearing on this, finally. Having availability of accessory apartments, even though somewhat limited in terms of what can qualify as an accessory apartment under various applicable codes, it still will potentially make available more affordable housing in this community, as well as offer some relief to people who have too much house and are perhaps being pushed out of the village because they can no longer afford to maintain their houses. We reviewed codes from similar provisions from many neighboring communities. We researched this. We spent a lot of time on it. Christine was also on the committee. Housing committee seems to be a way of getting on this board, so it feels very good, very satisfying to be here tonight.
Did you just want me to go through the provisions?
Sure. I think the little bit more background was we tasked your committee with actually coming up with actionable things. And I think we wanted to have some that we can do rather quickly, and we know some will be longer term. And I think this was one that we kind of identified that we could do it in a relatively short period of time. So it's been about 6 months since we probably had, you were sitting on the other side of the dais recommending it. We'll call it 6 months, a fat 6 months. But here we are.
But here we are.
Okay, so accessory apartments would be permitted by special permit in all the one-family residence districts and in the business district, in one-family houses in the business district. It defines outbuildings. You'll see later why that's an important definition. It defines an outbuilding and specifically says that an outbuilding does not include a garage All right, it states the purposes of the local law, which Janice just went through, so I won't repeat them. Then the requirements for the special permit is that the one-family dwelling that it's going to be in has to be compliant with the zoning code. The accessory apartment has to be located in the principal building or in an outbuilding. And remember, an outbuilding is not a garage. An outbuilding might be a stable or a carriage house that's on the property. The owner of the single-family residence must occupy either the principal dwelling or the accessory apartment. They have to be on the site. An accessory apartment can't include more than 2 bedrooms. The residence that's seeking the permit for the special permit has to have existed in its present size for 5 years prior to the application. So somebody can't come in and add on and then put in an apartment. No exterior changes can be made to the building that would alter the single-family character and appearance of the residence. The accessory apartment shall not adversely affect the character of the neighborhood in which it's located, and remember, it's the planning board that would be giving the special permit. So in applying this requirement, the planning board considers the effect of the proposed accessory apartment on parking, traffic, noise, congestion, appearance, and any other factor that the planning board deems relevant. Then it specifically says the planning board may refuse to issue a special permit if it finds that the number of such approved apartments in the neighborhood, including the one proposed, will adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. The apartment must comply with the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code, including all the requirements for a dwelling unit. But people should recognize then that this means that basements may or may not qualify, separate spaces may or may not qualify if they don't quite have the number of exits, or if the ceilings aren't high enough, and whatever. So each dwelling unit, both obviously the existing house, but the accessory apartment has to meet the state fire and building code. There can't be any violations of the code in existence in the house, and then no more than 50 accessory apartment special permits can be in existence at any one time. And it also specifies that the limit on the number of accessory apartment special permits may not be varied by the zoning board of appeals, so there can never be more than 50. And it's got the requirements, the procedures for what you've got to submit. And then that all of the special permits, they'll be issued for a period of not more than 3 years, and they can be renewed. The purpose of having the renewal provision is if there's been a problem in the neighborhood because, maybe there's a parking problem, or they've been renting out their apartments to really loud people, or something like that, and the owner's not, then that can be brought before the planning board upon renewal, and the planning board would take that into account. The accessory apartment special permit will expire automatically when the owner of the building changes, or if the owner of the building moves out. In that event, the person who takes over the property's got 90 days to reapply for the special permit. It's got penalty provisions and the fee provisions. I think those would be important.
I think another important part of this, other than increasing the housing stock, was the safety issue, where, I think it kind of gives us, for people, that there might be some accessory apartments now that aren't legal, that we would, kind of have something, yes, we can still go find them now, but at least now we'll have an in to go check them out before they'd be used for that, assuming people want to legalize them. I think that's really it, right?
Yeah, I'll be glad to answer any
I
questions.
don't know if anybody on the board has any comments or questions. Anyway, we've had a couple work sessions on this already.
I did have one thing that came to me so I need a refresher, because I know we discussed this, but in it talked about how the changes to the property to make it, to put an accessory apartment could not change the character of the building from being a single-family residence by the determination of the planning board. And I know we probably talked, but could someone refresh me? How did we have a concern about contributing buildings in the historical district and change it? limiting changes to them. To me, the statement they can't be changed beyond being a single-family residence is different than saying you're trying to protect the integrity of a contributing building. And sort of what's come up is because some of it is the kind of conditions we put on in the new multifamily zoning for historical building modification. That said, I know that there were some coverage bonuses in relation to that, and there's not really a whole bunch of legislation relating to the historical district contributing buildings beyond the demolition review. So,
We never discussed that.
There's no differentiation, right?
There are no
between-
Pardon?
There effectively aren't any regulations yet. in the
No,
historic
unless
district,
that's
it
what
meant
I'm
if
saying,
you-
except for the demolition review.
Right,
Right.
right. And if you're talking about that it meant changing a whole lot of the front of the building so that it would qualify as a demolition, remember the definition of demolition covers more than just taking it down, yeah, you'd have an issue. And if you can't do that, if you can't comply with the code, then you can't have the apartment, or you've got to come up with another way to do
No,
it.
well, you're getting my focus wrong. My focus is, there's a specific clause in there that says the planning board can determine that the change would change the character of a single-family home. So-
Right, but it still has to comply with all other provisions of the code. And if a provision of the code for the historic district, let's say it was changed and said, you couldn't add any more doors. And the only way you can make this thing by compliant is to have another door, well, then you couldn't have the apartment.
Right, okay, now you've jumped way ahead of me. So
Okay,
let's-
I guess I'm not understanding anymore.
No, I'm just saying, you're ahead of me, you're talking about some kind of historic district legislation or control or guideline or whatever that doesn't exist right now, this thing that you can't have another door. Whatever your hypothetical, your hypothetical example.
Yeah, it was a hypothetical, yeah.
Right, so none of that exists in the historic district code.
Correct.
So we have this potential hole, is all I'm pointing out. The hole is that in fact you could change the historic character of the building, but still have it remain an agreeable single-family residence in appearance.
That's right.
And I'm just saying that,
They don't pay with it.
do we need to think about that? I understand we don't want to piecemeal
Not now.
historical district code, but is
Yeah, I
there any?
guess give me an example. I'm just having a real hard time picturing Mark. It might be my problem. I can't.
Well, like I'm just thinking about the restrictions we put on, thinking about the Stearns house, where, you couldn't change the height, the footprint, you couldn't do anything that would significantly alter what would be considered the historical facade of the building.
Yeah, I know, but remember, under this, the apartment has to exist in a part of the building that's existed for 5 years. So you're not going to be able to change a thing like raise a roof or add on to it to accommodate this accessory
But you will
apartment. So
probably be
maybe
having to add doors or something,
the doors could be an
windows,
issue.
doors, that kind of
Doors
thing.
could be an issue, but
Yeah.
But the planning board can say no. The planning board can say, no exterior changes shall be made that in the opinion of the planning board would alter the single-family character and appearance of the residence. And obviously, they're going to consider whether the proposal comes from a house in the historic district or one in the...
That's where I disagree with you. I don't think that they will consider that unless they're told to consider that. Right now, it won't be a consideration, I bet.
I think that's correct, but I think that's something that would be dealt with in the historic district regulations rather than that.
Like I said, I'm not going to argue one way or the other. I was just bringing this up
Yeah.
because,
I think you're right though, but I think right now, that kind of covers any changes in the historic district, not just for accessory apartments. It should just be a reason to be making a change. And I think you actually said it, you don't want to kind of piecemeal the historic district stuff in our legislation. So, I think when we get the proposal from the historic district committee,
Yeah.
it will cover that and somewhere separately.
I'm fine with it as it is now. I just, again, I preface this by saying, did I forget whether we talked about this? Because it seems like something.
I don't think we did, I don't know this
I don't think
And so
we
you have to come down on either one side or the other. One side is don't piecemeal it, or the other side is piecemeal it. So that's the two directions you can
And I think
have.
that the reason we piecemealed it for the Stern building was because we're giving a bonus, so it's kind of,
Right.
so.
So
So you're okay?
I'm okay. I just think it's worth
It was worth
keeping in
talking about,
mind.
yeah. I don't think we hadn't discussed it, so.
The one thing that I don't remember is, did we talk, and I think Janice, I left the committee just when we were starting to talk about parking regulations or parking associated with the accessory apartment law. So how does that work?
Well, what we decided, because there would be an awful lot of buildings that may want accessory apartments that don't have parking now because they're downtown and they just don't have parking. So decided to be more flexible with it, and that's why one of the conditions, it specifically says the planning board's supposed to see whether there would be a parking issue, rather than having a fixed number of parking spaces per apartment. So
Okay.
that's one of the things the planning board has to take into consideration. And that may well be one of the things you would end up reviewing when the renewal comes up, you know? They're renting out to people who have 3 cars and we don't have any parking spaces on the street, something like that.
Okay.
I think we also decided not to address that specifically in here because we're looking at an overhaul of parking.
Entire parking.
Right.
Right.
So it's just what is the other issue is what do you put in here and what do you let live in a different.
Right. Okay.
Okay, one other thing I want to mention, I just should have started with this, that this committee worked very hard on this, and as well as Christina. It included Deb Flock, who's here, Karen Chatzell, Sue Robinson, Mel Hansman from Westchester Disabled on the Move, and Rose Noonan, who is our guiding star through all. And Connie has been the board liaison to this committee, and we really couldn't have done this without the board support. So, thank you.
Anything else from the board, or we'll open it up to the public? Any public comments on this proposed law?
Peter Bernstein, 17 North Cotton Ave. I recently joined the Affordable Housing Committee.
Sorry, I left you out of that list.
No, I didn't have anything to do with this, but I'm here to speak, obviously, in support of it. It's a great idea, give the flexibility for folks to stay in their homes and have their parents or grandparents move in. One point I would make, I guess it's a question on the renewability and the 3-year deal, is, it seems to me part of it is to get people to do things correctly, right? Not do it, under the table, right? To get permits and put in, do this officially. But it is an expense, right? To put in a kitchen, perhaps, put in a bathroom, and it also could have tax implications on assessments. So the thing is it a disincentive for people to do what it takes to do it right if they think they're only going to be guaranteed the right to do it for 3 years? The assessment will stay, right? You put another kitchen in your house, put another bathroom. The assessment will stay. You make the initial investment, which you're going to, amortize over time. However, so I think it's, a question and worth discussing if someone's going to make that kind of investment. What should be their guarantee that it's going to last for longer than 36 months?
Sure.
The presumption, and this is one of the many issues we went back and forth trying to just balance the interests of people who want to have this kind of accessory apartment and the interests of other people in the village who might be somewhat trepidatious about what's going to happen if my neighbor now has an apartment in their house. So this was one of the compromises that we came, that 3 years. Basically, if you've got good tenants and everything is going well, the presumption is that this will be very easily renewable. The fees for renewal are modest. But if again, you've rented to people who bring in 17 relatives and 14 trucks, the planning board would retain some control over that. So that's really was to reassure the community that this wasn't something that once the permit was issued, well, too bad if things don't go well. So it's the rights of the family who wants to have the apartment and reassurance to the community that there will remain some oversight of it.
Also I could say, I don't know if it would be any reassurance, but I was the attorney for Hastings for many years, from when the law was drafted and 20 years beyond that. They had a long time. I never saw a situation where it wasn't renewed. They're always renewed. And it shows 2 things. Number one, they get renewed. Never a problem. In one village in all those years, there was never a problem with the accessory apartments.
And I think, I think we kind of looked at the history, and I noticed it had been brought up before, and it never went forward. So I think we were being a little cautious and saying,
let's make it 3 years, not 5 or 10, just because we expected some pushback and, you know, you're going to be ruining our neighborhoods. So at least we kind of put in a 3-year kind of, you know, stop in case there, you know, that did happen. So I kind of see your point, and I think, you know, if in, you know, 6 years we've never had any problems, maybe we could look to make them 5 or 10-year permits as well. But I think it's nice to have that kind of formal oversight, at least in the beginning at 3 years. I mean, we talked, I think, about 1, we talked about 5, you know, and we kind of just met in the middle. And I'm actually frankly surprised we haven't had more kind of pushback from well, not yet anyway, I guess we still have a public hearing.
It's still open.
But, you know, I was anticipating more, and I thought this was kind of a key, the 3-year kind of, you know, backstop on the law. Any other public comment?
Maggie Coddington, Hillside Terrace. First of all, I'd like to speak out in support of this proposal and thank the committee for their hard work in putting it forward. I think it's a really important step to be able to offer that kind of housing to people, to enable them to stay in the village, both young people and older people who, my own mother, a number of years ago, when she was a widow and in a large house with no children left, she took in boarders one at a time, and it helped her stay there for a number of years. I'm not going to quibble about, you know, some of those terms, although I do agree with Peter Bernstein about the 3-year renewal period. My concern partly has to do with, you know, the people who will be in those apartments, whether it's the owner who has moved into the smaller apartment or, you know, the other renter. So if it's not renewed, what's the impact on them? You know, is there an appeal process? What's the, you know, I'm a little worried about if there are complaints in the neighborhood, especially with parking, which, as we all know, is already an issue in the downtown area. I'm just a little worried about people, you know, making this accessory apartment their home, and then all of a sudden they have to move out. Like, what's the sort of appeal process? What's the, you know, how much time do they have to, if it's eliminated, how much time do they have? So just thinking that through. And then I just have a question about garages. So is there any possibility for confusion about what's a garage and what's not a garage? If there's a carriage house, for example, an older property with a carriage house that's used as a garage, but it's really considered a carriage house, I mean, is there a definition issue that needs to be clarified there? Just wondering.
No, we did not define garage. But an outbuilding is an existing structure such as a former servant's quarters or carriage house separate and detached from the principal building. You know, right now there's a provision in the code already for outbuildings, but it has a, it says only on lots that are at least 60,000 square feet or more, but you could have an outbuilding on a smaller lot. So that's why we changed the definition to cross out that it had to be on a 60,000 square foot lot. Okay. But a garage, actually the code doesn't define garage, but it's only permitted under the list of permitted uses are garages for the storage of automobiles. So I guess it's defined that way. So okay. I don't think there would be a confusion okay. If there were carriage houses.
Okay.
To get back to your first question, I think you're anticipating so let's say that a couple decides that they're going to apply for an accessory apartment and they will move into the smaller quarters and rent out their house. And after 3 years the permit is not renewed, that would be because there was a major issue with the tenants. At that point, the homeowner still owns their home. Nobody can tell them where they have to sleep. You know, nobody can tell them that they have to move back into the main portion of the house. They'll decide what they want to do. There's also no preclusion here, and I believe I'm right about reapplying If a permit wasn't renewed, it would be because there was an issue. So the issue would be with that particular situation. So a person could reapply.
Right, I guess I'm just worried that, as, that the owner may have made a significant financial investment in constructing the apartment, and then now no longer has the rental income to offset that. And so then, now they're going to be precipitated to move out of their home, to have to put their home on the market because it didn't work out for that, whatever that particular reason was. And then, looking at the other side, if the homeowner rents out to, say, I don't know, young couple, and that young couple has to move out because after 3 years it's not renewed for some reason because of a parking shortage, say. I'm just a little worried about the human impact, but I think.
Well, if any rental is usually there's a lease term, right? So if a person was renting, let's say somebody rents a house, no accessory apartment, it's going to be for a term, a period of time, and it could, at the end of that time, the lease may or may not be renewed. So that's. I'm sorry.
That's always a risk.
Yeah, that's
It's always a risk, yeah,
That's always a
okay, I
risk of a
guess,
renter.
yeah, it's just,
We looked at some, and, it's interesting that the comments are like, well, 3 years is really, that's kind of a short period of time, because we really expected, as Brian said, concerns coming the other direction. We can certainly look at this. But this, we thought, gave everybody a little sense of, quiet about this. Also, if there's let's say you rented to a difficult tenant who you're not too thrilled about, this gives you an opportunity in 3
Right.
years that there's sort of a stop and let's take a look at this, and if it's not working, there remains some control.
okay, thanks. Well, I don't want to throw out the.
We did also specify 90 days if someone sells the home, and you have to reapply and stipulate, you buy the house, you decide you don't want to have the accessory apartment, the people living there still have 90 days. That is explicit into the law.
Right.
But it isn't for if it's not renewed.
All right. Thanks so much for
Sure.
posing that.
One other question I had, and I don't remember if we talked about this or not, was, did we talk about maybe having a grace period where maybe the fees would be half or something in the first 6 months, a year, if people want to legalize their current ones? And I don't know if that's something we want to consider.
I thought there was the original, I don't know about half fees, but
But whatever, just throw that.
there was discussion about grandfathering or grace period, but then that dropped out in one of our work sessions.
Yes. Because of the restrictions of the building code, that we didn't want to imply that anything that now exists could be grandfathered in if it doesn't meet code.
Right. That's not maybe we could, they do that sometimes, when you go taxes, you pay, half or something. But I guess,
These are pretty.
yeah, it's $250 something.
It's going to be the cost of the architectural drawings and the contractors that get you.
That's true.
Just so I'm clear though on Nikki's question, so if a permit isn't renewed, is there any, what is the advance notice, or what is the notice given to the tenant? That, is there any provision that, not so much in the case of a homeowner dwelling in that accessory apartment, but if it were a renter dwelling in that apartment, so now it's like, well, this is no longer going to be a legal accessory apartment. You have X number of days to vacate.
Well, you wouldn't know that necessarily until it came to the planning board for the renewal, right?
Right.
And then you'd see, because there was public, someone would probably know ahead of time if there were issues with the property. It would have to be an issue that, I can't imagine that one
It's
would.
not going to get not renewed just because somebody thinks it shouldn't be renewed. There would have to be a good reason for it. But the answer is there's no provision in here. There is one that says, if somebody, there's a couple of 90-day provisions, but not in that section.
Okay.
It could be added, but, I think a lot of it depends on what the reason is it's not being renewed, and if it's not being renewed because it's kind of, I feel funny hypothesizing about it because I have never seen a situation where an apartment's been a problem. But maybe you imagine, that they're just being really careless about who they're renting it to, and they're always having all the, they're not making any effort to keep down rowdy parties or people hanging out in front or something. Maybe you don't want to let want that person to stay an extra 90 days, you know? You have to assume that the village is gonna be reasonable and, you know, it's not renewed, okay, you've got, you know, 30, 60, 90 days to get out.
And that might depend on the situation.
Exactly.
You know, so if
I could see
it's,
situations in 90 days would be fine, but I could see situations where ASAP, you know?
so it should be, I mean, I think it's sort of implied here that it would be at the discretion of the planning board, and that's probably as it should be. I mean, suppose the issue is a, you know, drug dealing or something, you don't want to give that person 90 days.
Finish it all.
Mercy College, Greek life.
But presumably, the landlord should,
Have the lease.
should not extend the lease to a term that goes beyond their underlying special permit,
Yeah.
or accessory
Yes.
apartment permit.
Yeah, you think, but we need.
I mean, we're not, you know,
Yeah,
not
we
every
didn't
landlord's
get
gonna
into
handle
the
that.
lease provisions at all.
No, but that's between the landlord and the tenant. But if you have a lease that expires either at the same time or close to, well, then there's your notice. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because your lease is
Right.
almost up, so you know that you could be out.
I think also in terms of real-world situations, if there was a problem with tenants, there'd probably be a police record of problems with the tenant, with that property. I mean, it's not going to just be all of a sudden from out of the blue, someone's going to come to the planning board meeting and go, oh, by the way, you know, I really don't like where you park your car all the time.
Right, yeah.
I don't think it's going to come, you know, like that. It's going to be like the owner is going to know this problem.
Okay.
I would imagine.
Any other public comment on this? Please.
How do you do? I'm Larry Sheps. Question. I read that you're opening 50 slots for people to sign up to be able to rent out part of their residence. And I was wondering, what's the protocol for that? How do I get on that list?
It's not a list, it's a maximum of 50 permits for accessory apartments. So anybody who wants to have an accessory apartment in their home, let's make it really, really easy. There's already, the structure of the house is such that a portion of it could be an accessory apartment with, you know, without huge massive renovations to the exterior of the building. Then you would apply for a permit.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're just trying to limit the number. We're trying to reassure people that there's not going to be 400 of these, that there's a limit of 50 in the village. And Mary Ann, you pointed out that in Hastings,
Never got close.
There was,
Not even
the
close.
highest it ever got was about 34.
Right.
And that was over 20 years.
Well, I'm kind of a poster boy for doing this. I have a large house and a garage apartment. It's not an apartment, but it's been, the C of O is clear. They have clean title of it. I mean, there's no violations with the building department. And my 3 kids, 2 of them are out of the house, and the younger one is 16, will be out in 2.5 years. So I'm thinking down the line, what am I going to do here? I got this huge, it's big now. And what can I do? And I thought, well, if I could rent out the main house, my scenarios are I could rent out the main house, go to a little house, or I could rent out the little house, just give me a cushion to stay in the community. I've made a great effort to keep my house historically correct. It's, you know, really insulated well, and it's a great house. So how do I participate in the community and still be here? I'm 63, so I want to plan ahead. So
you're right, you're the poster boy for this.
I truly am.
Absolutely.
So-
First come, first served,
Yeah.
essentially.
What's that?
It's first come, first served.
So when is this first come, first served going to start?
Well, we have to vote.
We have to vote on it, but we can't vote on it tonight, so probably about a month.
Well, as far as enactment, yeah, and then it just, there has to be a procedure implemented in the building department, but it would be a matter of a month or 2, I'm sure.
All right, well, you'll see me there then.
Okay, first of all.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
That's great. I think we'd have at least one person to be.
Okay, so we know we have at least one
I
apart.
feel like I should say something in a ruined neighborhood.
Well,
So I guess we'll just keep the public hearing open for another meeting.
well, you could close, well,
It doesn't matter, yeah, I mean,
either way.
We'll let the, you know, if everyone has outrage come to the next one. We'll keep the public hearing
we
open.
have to look at the seeker, we have to do the EAF, and then there was, the neighboring municipalities had to be notified, and we're waiting for a notification to the county and a response from the county, which is typical for zoning law. So, you know, by next meeting, it could be ready. Yeah,
Very good.
but you've had your public hearing, if you want to keep it open, you can.
I always assume it's good to keep the public hearing open. So when Hillary's telling everyone it's horrible.
Yeah.
Very good.
So on to the next. Agreement with Uni Equities Providers Corporation relating to a property located at the southern end of Hermit's Road. This is kind of a culmination of about a year's worth of work, Marianne, where we both negotiated a legal claim and a property transfer. We involved our, in addition to our village attorney, we used a specialized environmental counsel. We used our engineers. So we've been in negotiations, not active, but on and off for about a year. So to discuss, the terms of the agreement, I'll turn it over to Marianne, who's worked on them intimately.
Okay, the agreement arose from, and it settles a notice of claim that was filed by the Unit Equities Providers, which owns the lot that they referred to. They filed a notice of claim back in May 2015 for the cost of cleanup and remediation on the site and a reduction in property value, alleging that it used to be the site of a former dump. And the easiest thing is to just go through the terms of the agreement, which aren't that long, and they really explain everything. The first provision is that the owner will apply to the planning board to subdivide the property. The property's about 5.5 acres, to subdivide it into 2 lots. One of the lots is about 2.25 acres. On that lot, the person who's the agreement is with is proposing to build a house. That's not part of the agreement, only the subdivision is part of the agreement. And then the other lot would be an almost 3-acre lot, which you'll see later, which will be conveyed to the village. And then about another 1/4 acre that'll be part of the right-of-way. The village will indicate its approval of this plan when the people are before, that when the subdivision application is before the planning board. It's only the planning board that can grant the subdivision. Then if the subdivision's approved, the owner would transfer one of the lots, the almost 3-acre lot, to the village for $90,000. And then as to the other lot, the village and the owner would enter into a declaration of covenants and restrictions, which I'll go through in a second, and that covenant will be filed in the Division of Land Records against each of the properties. So if anybody goes to buy that lot or the house on the ones we built, this is going to be filed, and they'll see that these restrictions are on the property. What the principal, there's Bernie. I hear Bernie. Okay, and these are the provisions of this declaration that's going to be filed. That on the one hand, the village acknowledges that it's familiar with the premises that it's buying, and it's not going to file any claims against the person it bought it from for the fact that there might be some contamination on the property. Then more importantly, and this is the real heart of this declaration, the person buying that lot, the person retaining that lot, and anybody buying after that, has to release and waive any claims against the village for environmental cleanup or for reduction in property value. So you buy that lot, you can't later come after the village and say you got to clean up the lot, or my lot is worth less because there used to be this village dump next to it. That has to be in the deed conveying the property, and it has to be continued in every other deed. Now, there's no way of guaranteeing that, once it's sold to the third person down, that it's in the deed, which is why it'll also be filed as a covenant against the property. So anybody who does a title search, and nobody's going to buy a piece of property without a title search, is going to see that there are these restrictions on the property, that whoever owns it can never sue the village for the fact that this dump used to be be next door. And then the other covenant on that, and it specifies, and this is the part we went to environmental council for, to make sure that we had belts and suspenders and belts, to make sure that it was as airtight as you could make one of these agreements. And then there's also a covenant that the property being conveyed to the village would be used only for public recreational purposes and shall remain forever green and unimproved, except for access roads, trailhead parking, walking trails, public restrooms, and similar buildings. One thing I left out is this 3-acre parcel abuts what is now village. Is it village parkland or just open space?
I think it's probably all parkland.
Well, so it's adding 3 acres onto the village parkland there. Okay, so that's actually the most important provision of the agreement. Right now, it also provides that the village shall cause a paper street presently running through the property to be formally abandoned. It's really sort of meaningless because this paper street runs through the property that's being conveyed to the village, and the village could do whatever it wants with it anyway, but it's in there. The agreement's contingent upon final subdivision approval. If it's not granted, the whole thing won't happen. If the planning board imposes any recreation fees or other fees for the subdivision, the village will be responsible, but it clarifies that the subdivision fees have to be paid by them and any consultant fees have to be paid by them. And then about the deed will contain a reference to a restrictive covenant restricting the use of the village lot to recreational purposes. And those are the terms of the agreement. The other side, I had hoped to have the signed agreement today, but I understand he was out of town. There's no problem with it, and I should probably get it within the next day or two. And if the board approves it, then the mayor can sign it, and the unit equities next step would be to go to the planning board for subdivision approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just want to say that I think this is incredibly well done, tight. It's a thing of beauty. This protects us as well as it can, and just buttons every button, so that this is as most protection. This is like as ironclad as it can get going forward to get into this kind of a deal. So, track this through, and thank you.
Well, thank you.
Any of you guys have any questions, comments? It was been an interesting, the reason this hasn't been public is because we've been negotiating for a year, and anytime property's involved, never mind any kind of legal issues, you can't be negotiating at the public board meeting. So, in the end, I think we got as good a result as we could. We're going to end up with, 3 additional acres for the Irvington Woods. We're going to look at this, and we're going to make, it's probably going to be trailhead and maybe some parking. So I think it's going to be, have a tangible effect on the village as well. So it's not, not just avoiding some legal issues. It's also a positive thing. And, we're going to probably look at, doing some cleanup and things like that as well. So, it's going to be parkland. So we know what we're getting into. But thanks for all the hard work. Thanks to your colleagues for all their hard work. From where we started to where we came from, I think I feel very good about it. Sorry Kelly couldn't be here also because, she's been, all over this as well, so. But I think if there's no questions, I think we're ready to vote. So I'll read the agreements. Whereas the execution of an agreement with Uni Equities Providers Corporation is an unlisted action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA, whereas the Board of Trustees reviewed an environmental assessment form and determined that said action would result in no adverse environmental impacts, now therefore be it resolved to issue a negative declaration under SECRA, and further resolved to approve the attached agreement with Uni Equities Providers Corporation concerning the property located at the southern end of Hermits Road, and to authorize the mayor to execute said agreement subject to the approval of the village attorney. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is approval of out-of-town travel for the police chief. Sorry, I think this is the annual conference the chief goes to.
Yeah, there's actually two items.
2 annual conferences.
Well, there's a summer one, and then there's one related to Irma, so that's, we're picking them both up here at the same time, but all of these are budgeted under their travel and education.
Any questions on this?
Resolved to approve Police Chief Michael Saron to attend the 2016 FBI National Academy Annual Training Conference and Exhibition in St. Louis, Missouri, from July 24th to 26th, 2016. The cost of the conference, lodging, and airfare is not to exceed $3,000. Further resolved to approve Police Chief Mike Saron to attend the PERMA 2016 Annual Conference at the Sagamore Hotel in Lake George, New York, on Thursday, May 26th, 2016. The cost of the conference and mileage is not to exceed $500. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second?
I'd like to add in there that we all get a baseball cap.
Yeah, those nice FBI ones.
Yeah, exactly.
All in favor? Aye. Nice to have it at Sagamore, too. That's a nice job. Home rule request concerning a local hotel motel occupancy tax. Deja vu all over again.
Assemblyman Abenanti is interested in introducing this legislation again in the Assembly and has asked for your support in doing that as a home rule request. As you know, legislation similar to this, if not virtually identical, did make it through the legislature this past year, but was vetoed by the governor. But I think, we would like to have this in to see where it goes and see if we can have a different result.
Yeah, and obviously we don't have any hotels or motels in town, but we're supporting our local municipalities, which is basically the town of Greenberg, and I guess, and Sleepy Hollow and Mount Pleasant. So, questions on this? Do we have to get this quickly over to them, Larry? Because I remember last year it was like,
yeah,
I feel like we had like our police drive it over and they drove it across.
Oh yeah, it's not that quick,
Not
but
that bad.
we will be delivering it in short order.
Resolved to approve home rule request for Assembly Bill A-209A, entitled An Act to Amend the Local Law in relation to authorizing the town of Greenberg to adopt a local law to impose hotel motel occupancy taxes for hotels not located in a village, authorizing specified villages in the towns of Greenberg and Mount Pleasant to adopt local laws to impose a hotel motel occupancy tax in such villages, and providing for the repeal of such provisions upon expiration thereof. The only thing I'll add, in my opinion, is that you also don't have to impose this tax. It just gives the village or the town the right to.
It's enabling legislation.
Exactly. So I will make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is intermunicipal agreement for road patching services. This is the pothole killer.
That's it. I think that's all you need to know. It's a joint effort between, again, the Greenberg villages and the village of Sleepy Hollow as well.
I think that, from my own anecdotal evidence, I actually drive over a big patch in Tarrytown every morning. It feels like it's held up very well.
Yeah.
Much better than the cold patches that I also drive over that become potholes in about 2 weeks. So excited to have the old pothole killer truck back. Anybody have any questions on this?
No.
Are we doing the same amount of time, or are we doing more?
It's actually a little bit more than last year, but not noticeably. It's 16 hours, I believe. I'm sorry. Yeah, 16 hours versus I think last year was 14 or 13. It was a weird
Right.
division.
How many potholes, what percentage of our potholes do you know? Did that go?
What they got to during the time they were here, it was less than 50%, but it was a good number. And last year there was a lot more probably than this year, so they should be able to get to virtually everything this year.
Do you have a route already? Do you have a route? Is there, will every street in the village be covered?
Not yet, we don't know that yet.
Okay.
Once this agreement's done, the administrator in Elmsford is actually working on scheduling everything out amongst the 7
Okay.
villages.
If residents know of really heinous potholes, can they get in touch with the village?
Anytime, sure. Anytime. You probably know about it already.
Resolved that the Village Board of the Village of Irvington hereby authorizes the village administrator to execute on behalf of the Village of Irvington an intermunicipal agreement with participating members of the Village Officials Committee of Greenberg and Mount Pleasant for services by Patch Management, Inc., located at 451 Tyburn Road, Fairless Hills, Pennsylvania, 19030, in accordance with the proposal of January 5th, 2016, to provide contract services for the spray injection repair program, the pothole killer truck, with participating villages. Minimum commitment of each participating village is 2 days of work, up to 8 hours a day, at the cost of $3,792, and other associated costs for additional hours, days of work. Make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Intermunicipal agreement with Irvington Union Free School District for drainage work at Trails End.
Okay, so this is an agreement, as you said, between the village and the school district, and it relates to drainage work on village drainage under Trails End, which is a small road located by the East Field. During the course of the design work for the East Field renovation project that's ongoing, it was found through inspection that a segment of drainage pipe under Trails End leading into Field Point Drive was 18 inches in diameter, and the original plans for Field Point called for 24 inches. The plans for the East Field and the drainage coming off of the East Field requires 24 to be there. So this is really, why 18 was installed is really a village issue and goes back to the 1980s. And we're not conjecturing how that all happened, but we need to fix it. So our engineers have reviewed this thoroughly, so they know the exact work that's being done. The village will be paying for that those drainage repairs, but it's being done as part of the larger project that the school is bidding out, which really makes the most sense rather than getting multiple contractors involved. So this intermunicipal agreement makes that happen essentially, and this needs to be in place before the school district can go out to bid.
The agreement has to be in place.
The agreement has to be in place before the school district can bid it out.
Not the actual change.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
My question is, this is going through existing private property? Is there easement there already for the village?
The drainage work that's being done is already village drainage. It's under Trails End, which I think is private, but the underground drainage is owned by the village.
Yeah, I know. It looks like it's going between two houses, right?
Yeah, but
So I was just wondering.
that's not
The
part of our
school
responsibility.
district has a big agreement with all the property owners. in
That's
Field
all I'm
Point.
getting at,
But
is
we
that
don't
as long
need
as-
to be party to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
okay.
not the drainage that we're
And
talking
that
about
takes
here.
care of
pick it
like
up.
the hours they'll be working and stuff, so.
Right. Our drainage starts where the private property ends, at the end of Trails End.
You mean literally at the end of the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
I was trying to figure that out. I mean, I was looking at the map,
Yeah.
and this isn't all private property here, two different houses?
Yep. The drainage work, and frankly, this isn't
Yeah.
the best map to
Yeah.
use, but the drainage work that's covered by this is actually from here to Field Point Drive, which is over here.
Oh, and not this.
No,
Well,
that-
this
that's-
is all them doing
That's all,
that.
yeah, that's all school. And they have whatever agreement, or they're working on the agreements that they need.
Oh, okay, so they've got the dirty part.
Yeah, I guess I'd say
The
that.
messy part, whatever. Legal.
And did our engineers come up with a cost estimate?
Yeah, but they concur with, again, it's in the range of, they thought 15 to 20,000, but we won't know until the bids come in, but
But they agreed with the,
in either case, we're prepared to take that on as a cost, as I said, since this drainage was installed in a substandard way to begin with.
Is the feed drainage off of Eastfield, is that also sub 18 inch, I mean, rather than 24 inch subpar, or
No, I think what they're installing, you mean in between the properties and coming off,
there's something already there, right?
they're putting in new drainage in between the properties. No, I don't think there is anything there. On the East Field?
Between the two properties?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any drainage to speak of, because right now, it's all in those backyards, and in that section of the East Field, it's all just washed out. So,
Yeah, there is some existing drainage, but it's 8 inch.
yeah, I mean,
It's,
and I think it's
might be for
private,
toilet.
and I think it's private that some of the homeowners install to try to deal with the issues, frankly.
so they're getting a lot of water off of the slope there.
Yeah, and, I mean, I'm not in a position of saying how the school district project affects those private owners, but it appears from some of the discussions I've had that there'll be improvements in terms of how drainage is handled off of the East Field, and it only makes sense that our pipe is big enough to handle it. I mean,
Yeah, for
it
sure.
really has to be.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Resolved to approve an intermunicipal agreement with the Irvington Union Free School District regarding drainage work at Trails End and to authorize the village administrator to execute said agreement. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
And both of these past two resolutions are really wonderful examples of working together to accomplish mutual goals most efficiently.
A approval of film permit for Across the Pond Productions LLC.
Okay. This is not as extensive as anything you've dealt with recently, but there's a private home on Circle Drive that is allowing film company to use it for filming on, would like to allow it on February 29th. It's actually a home that's under construction on Circle Drive, and that's what apparently the film people are looking for. So the police, we will have police present because they will be parking vehicles on Circle Drive. The film company is responsible for notifying the neighbors, and they may have, I've seen a draft of what they plan to send out. And as I said, the police will be involved to handle any traffic issues that come up.
And no guns?
No.
It's going to be quiet.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of activity. There are,
Well, other than the people in the cars.
yeah, I mean, 75 people are involved in the shoot total, which is not that unusual for a film production.
So for that, they're going to be notifying all of Circle Road,
I believe
Circle
so.
Lane, I mean, whatever it's called, Circle Drive, the entire population's going to be impacted.
How do we know that, I mean, this again is going back to whatever that late December incident. How do we know that residents have been notified? Like, do they send you a copy of the notification that they've sent out, or?
Typically, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that incident in December, there was notification, but they ran over.
Right.
That was,
They also only did it like on that street when that was going to be obviously very loud.
yeah,
Where at Circle Drive, this seems more contained.
pretty localized to the parking.
Have we dealt with these folks before
Uh,
in other permits?
Not this particular group, no.
Okay, because obviously we have to be cautious with certain groups going forward.
Yes, I mean, I think the fact that the police will be involved there, keep things flowing smoothly, the fact it's supposed to be done by 1 p.m., I think is a good sign. I think that the fact that they allow film time on our permits at 8 a.m., they want to start at 6, I assume that's going to be set up and things, but maybe they can get a response on Circle Drive at 6 o'clock in the morning.
The production it's an HBO series called Divorce, which I think we're just filming up in Tarrytown recently. So it's not a small production company. The actual company itself is probably set up just for this particular activity, but it's an HBO production.
Any other questions? We'll move forward. Resolved to approve a filming permit for Across the Pond Productions LLC for filming at 15 Circle Drive on February 29, 2016 for a permit fee of $1,000. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Reports of boards, standing committees, and officers. Trustee liaison reports. Mark?
I don't have too much right now, just, I know coming up tomorrow is a tree commission meeting, and it looks like we might have someone, a new resident to the village, going to the meeting to get a sense of what the tree commission does. There was some interest expressed, so we'll see how that pans out. And I really don't have any other great news, Van.
Okay. So again, I said this earlier, the Dogs on Leash pilot program for Matheson Park, registration for that starts tomorrow, and it goes through February 23rd. The actual pilot starts on March 8th, so it's March 8th through April. It's a 2-month pilot program. Your dog must have a current license with Greenberg, and then you stop at our village rec department to actually get the permit. And I just want to say a quick thank you to Joe Archino, our Rec and Park Superintendent, the Rec and Park Department, and definitely RPAC, because they put forward a great effort in listening to the community of dog lovers in Irvington and getting this pilot off the ground. So thank you to them.
And don't forget to bring your swab.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, so 2016 Teenscape Summer Travel Camp, registration for that begins this Wednesday, February 24th. Angela Shaw has information on that. The FACE Committee is working on a Spring Festival Clam Bake in Matheson Park for Saturday, May 14th. Music, food, entertainment, and possibly a zip line. So there will be more information on that to come. The FACE Committee, by the way, is meeting next Wednesday, 7:30 in the Senior Center. Youth baseball and softball registration is still open. Sponsors for the 2016 youth baseball and softball programs are needed. You can talk to Angela Shaw about that. Sponsor fees are $400 per team. Application forms for counselors and staff for the 2016 Irvington Summer Day Camp are now available. Maureen DePauli has information. The Rec and Park Advisory Committee, RPAC, is meeting on Wednesday, March 16th at 7:30 in the Senior Center. And they're also appearing before this board on March 7th to discuss the Rec and Parks Department budget. The Community Advisory Board is meeting March 8th at 8 a.m. in the Irvington Senior Center. The Woods Committee is meeting Thursday, February 25th, this Thursday at 7 p.m. at the O'Hara Nature Center. And that's it. Oh, I'm sorry, there's just one more thing. I think I emailed you and Brian, you and Larry, but it's just something that came up during a discussion with Joe and Larry Lonke. But we had talked about, when we were discussing the potential of a dog park in the woods, we talked about rampant unleashed dogs, and maybe adding additional police presence or monitoring. So if we can just keep that in mind as spring comes around. Yeah, that's it.
Great. I have one item the county asked me to read. It's related to the theater. Amy Helen performed last Saturday night to an almost sold-out house. Clock Tower will be presenting the Westchester premiere of the musical American Idiot, which is a rock musical like Green Day, which I saw on Broadway and was great. I'm sure this will be great also. The commission is replacing the 10-plus-year-old projector in the theater. They tried it out at last week's film festival, and they're getting bids now. So the money's coming from their self-producing fund, so it won't cost the village anything. It'll come from the film series. So it should be a nice state-of-the-art theater projector.
Highway Department has been dealing with the periodic snow and sleet that we've gotten, maintenance of winter equipment, recycling Christmas trees, filling potholes, assisted the Water Department with the water break on Park Road, and cleaning catch basin tops. And the Water Department has been reading meters, installing radio transmitters on all the meters in the village, maintenance of all the Water Department properties, repaired the water main break at Park Road, which was completed, and assisted DPW with the snowstorm.
Very good.
Who is the fire department?
I do.
Didn't they just do some water training?
Yes.
Weekend?
Ice
Up at the reservoir?
Ice rescue training,
Yeah.
not this weekend, but
2 weekends ago.
yeah, I think so.
I spoke with First Assistant Chief Tarracone, and he said he's going to be presenting us with a monthly report. So we'll have information on training, calls, that kind of stuff. So we thought he'll be taking on the next chief. He'll be the next full, chief. So he said he's going to, for our request, he'll be providing us with more information.
I'm taking some, so we go.
Yeah, sure. I think
Seems
you're
a little
always
cold at the time.
Yeah, well, that's good with ice rescue. Brenda?
We continue to work on the budget for next year, and our next workshop is on March 7th.
Larry?
Just a quick note that I'll be meeting with a representative from the New York State Parks Department to go over the newly awarded Aqueduct Crossing grant project. That'll be tomorrow.
Very good. And now on to the work session with Brightview Senior Living, Irvington.
Just give us a couple of minutes.
Sure, yeah, we'll set up. I'll mention that This is, work session. We're going to have, a new presentation from Brightview. We will ask all our questions, and although it's not a public session, we did purposely put the public comment right after the presentation. So if people have comments and questions, in there. If we could keep the questions kind of, or comments, I guess. The questions you can ask anything you want, but comments, if you keep it kind of on the new proposal, as opposed to, kind of everything you've heard up to this point. That's all I'll say about that. Let's go with Eric.
Hey, Eric, sorry. Okay.
I didn't realize that. Yeah, I'm making those decisions.
Well, better that.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, Andrew Teeters with Brightview. Thanks for having us back for another work session. Coming out of the last work session, it was clear to us we could not adequately address the massing and size concerns with that building model. So we went back to the drawing board, and we are not pursuing the 150-unit independent and assisted living building anymore. We are now looking at a new model, which is 60% the size of the previous building, and I'll get the first plan out here. Yeah. It's 100,000 square feet versus 165,000, which is 60% of where we were, and 116 units. It's assisted living and memory care, although a bit different than Terrytown. We recognize, and we've seen this at Terrytown, Brightview Terrytown, and throughout Westchester County, that there is a demand for larger apartments. And so within the assisted living portion of the building, in addition to the typical studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms that we have, we will be providing larger assisted living apartments as well, just to really broaden the package of services and product that we can provide. We think that will be well received in Irvington, and it's just a bit different than we've done anywhere else. So we've gone back, it's a new model, and what I'd like to do is walk through this concept that we've prepared. It's still very high level. We have just a conceptual site plan as well as a very conceptual rendering that we'll walk through, and then we'd like to get feedback. So to start, actually I'll just start on Broadway. As you come in, the driveway, some of the comments we heard just about the frontage, that we don't necessarily have to maintain this manicured front lawn. So conceptually what we're presenting here is an extension of the stone wall, but also natural landscaping along the frontage as you come up the hill. And then we'd have 2 surface parking areas which exist today on the south side and the north side. As you come up around the building, the front of the building is the same width as the current building, which is 158 feet 10 inches, so it's approximately the same width from Broadway. We're continuing to propose maintaining the trees in front of the building. To the extent that some of them may need to be removed, we'd be willing to relocate. They're of a size that we think we could actually relocate some of those trees along the front. The building is also approximately 290 to 300 feet from Broadway. Another advantage of this revised footprint is there's a pretty significant tree on the north side that we can preserve as well. Just shown here, it's a 30-some inch oak tree. So as you come up the hill, we're also just working with the grades, and we'll present a rendering as well, but we have a courtyard, but it's not an enclosed courtyard anymore. And actually, I'm going to bring a second plan here to give you a sense. This might even be easier to, which has the old footprint versus the new footprint. So you can see we have the enclosed courtyard before, now it's open. And really, it's almost as if it's two attached buildings. It's a 4-story building in the front, and the height of it's no higher than the current building on the property. And then you have this east-west wing, which attaches to the bar in the back, which on this side is 2 stories, and then on this side it's 3 stories. And we have a section view that we can show you that presents that. But it does give you a sense just of the reduction of the overall building footprint. There's over 20% less impervious surface with this new plan. And because it doesn't go as far back into the hill, we actually think we can save additional trees along the back hill, and it's about approximately 50% less excavation than the previous plan as well. So we're taking significant less soils off the site. We are still proposing to maintain the 6 stone buildings on the property. 3 stone buildings, which would accommodate 6 affordable housing apartments on the property, 3 stone buildings for the 6 apartments. And we still have structured parking as well. And so there's currently 46 approximately structured parking spaces within the garage, in addition to the surface parking across the site. I'll actually now present the conceptual rendering, which was the top plan is the initial DIS plan, and then the bottom is a concept showing the rendering front elevation along Broadway. Again, it's the same width as the existing building. It matches the width of the existing building. This is still high level. We haven't done colors and details. We really wanted to come to this work session tonight to see, are we heading in the right direction? We felt like obviously we weren't at the last meeting, and this is a completely new plan and a new model. So we're hopeful to get feedback tonight relative to this plan.
Same scale, Andrew, can you just explain?
Oh, yeah, this is the same scale as this, right? This was 264 feet approximately in length, and that's 158.10, so it's over 100 feet shorter. And as you can see back here, but that entire width is gone. So.
The distance between the 2 buildings too.
Oh, and we are still maintaining over 50 feet. I know that one of the main concerns was the distance from the stone building on the north to the building, and we actually think we can preserve and have sort of a better open area and garden area here with the 50 feet and just the way the building is now working between the two. Before we had a longer bar here, and now it's just a bit wider than the building itself. So it just opens up that northeast corner of the property. This red line at the top just shows the previous limit of disturbance, and so we're really trying to pull that back. JMC has been in discussions with the fire marshal's office as well, just about the road around the back of the building, so we'd have to work through those details. But we are confident that the limit of disturbance on this plan will be significantly less than the previous.
And you said the height is, in this new design, is no higher than the existing building?
Correct. The elevation, the ridge line of this building, it's closer, but the ridge line is no higher than the current building on the property today, and the width is the same width.
It was that in the previous.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, but weren't there 5 to 10 feet on top of?
It's not to say, it's a subtle difference. It's not that the absolute height of the building is the same as the absolute height of the existing building, but that because of the grade change going down, the top ridge line, as you said, where the top of the roof is at the same height as the ridge line of the existing building, because the existing building is set further back. It might be easier to show in section.
You have a section? Yeah.
What's the lower grade?
The current building, it sort of has this green mound of landscape mound, and then the 3 stories above it. So basically, we'll have a level where that green mound is today. And so the top ridge line stays the same, but our building is lower on the
Because
the
it's
site.
closer to Broadway.
Yeah, correct, yes.
Has that changed at all in terms of the setback? I think we had something here.
Yeah, it's between 290 and 300. We'd like to still try to maintain around that 300, but we're still, it's still very conceptual. We wanted to present the concept and see if we're heading in a good direction here. But this is the section view, so just give you a sense from Broadway here. Here's the front of the building, and then the back as it steps up into the hill. The courtyard is actually at the second level, and then the back of the building, there's only 2 levels there. Eric, do you have anything to add? Or?
No, that's it. I mean, you guys understand North Broadway's here. This is how far back the building is from North Broadway. This is that front section that matches the width of the existing building. This is that link that goes back and ties it into a 2- or 3-story structure behind it. This section cuts this farther north, so all you see here is that back building. That the larger section sits here. That's how far back that is from the road. And you can get a glimpse of the existing stone building. It sits a little bit farther out front.
So that's the current building right now. I'm sorry.
That's the current-
This one is, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
The accessory building, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're heading back to the mic. So.
Okay.
It's all right, we got these here, so as long as everyone else can see it.
So I guess I'll ask the first question on this rendering where you have the previous one and the new one. It looks like to me the rear part is much larger. What's visible from Broadway at the back of the building or anything? I know it's sloped.
It's about 160 feet further back. That giant tree that's here, if that stays, it's gonna help screen that for us. This section.
I think the obvious thing is we're gonna need some renderings to show that, and because that's the first thing that caught my eye too, is that
It's terrace. Right. Terrace. It is terrace. David, do you have to bring that photo of the existing landscaping that shows the preservation of as it exists today?
We don't have those with us yet. The way the topography is, one of the reasons with this section, as you come up, what really
Diego,
provides
use
microphone.
the microphone.
Okay.
That's it, that's the photo.
Yeah.
Can I show this photo?
Sure.
What really, and that photo will reinforce this. A lot of screening occurs by the first plateau that you come up that hillside there. So one of the things that was important with this revised plan was incorporating more of that natural landscaping along the frontage rather than the grass-maintained lawn, trying to do something more natural with some evergreens and some metal combinations to provide some initial screening as you're driving down Broadway. And then as you come out to the plateaus again, this building gets set back a lot further. This back portion of the building is further back than the existing white building that's there right now. So it's set back, the front line here is really in line with the back of that white building that's there right now. So it's set back in some distance as well.
I'll just make a comment. I think the worst part of this plan, in plan view, is just, I don't think this tells a good story. It doesn't tell the story what people are going to see. Because when I looked at this, the reality is we don't have the rendering today. You're going to be looking up this way. These are both at a second level, and then it steps up again. I don't know how much of this anybody will see, but when you look at it in plan view, it's as if you are seeing the whole thing. So I don't think it tells as good of a story as reality from Broadway. So I think that may be where you were going with that comment.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of that you have.
Yeah.
Although it's nice that the apartment building is the same size.
Just remember, the oak is deciduous.
It is, and if you go out there even right now, you can see how much that tree and that vegetation helps screen that portion of the site. Something like this, a site visit might be helpful too, where we can identify those locations and you can really see it when you're out in the field as well. But another important point as well, to try and keep as much of the parking structure as possible so that we don't keep increasing impervious areas. That kind of dictates a little bit of the line for this building as well. So we're maintaining like 46, 47 parking spaces under the building, so we have that length in that area over there.
One other question that's not related to the renderings was when you were saying that with the 116 units, 90 are going to be assisted living, and going beyond studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, you're also going to do larger? What can you just talk about what that means? And of 116 units, how many residents versus how many residents you would have had for 150 at the original plan?
Right. So, I'm going to sort of describe this in two extremes. The one is where we were before with 150 units with this independent living, assisted living, and memory care. Another typical model that we build is what we built in Terrytown, which is a smaller 90 or so apartment, assisted living, and memory care. This is a hybrid. This is a new model. We think it's unique to Irvington, and we think it will be well received by Irvington. What we're seeing in Westchester County, definitely at Terrytown, and what we really believe the market would want this, or when I say larger apartments, it would be more of, as opposed to say a 350 square foot studio up to a 800 or 900 square foot 2-bedroom that we typically have in assisted living. We're going to broaden that so that the apartments will go up to 1,200 or 1,300 square feet. And we may have more larger apartments. And to go along with that, we may even have sort of a concierge type service within the building. So the idea is to broaden the array of services within the building and the product itself. So if we have larger apartments and if we can offer certain types of services that we aren't offering elsewhere, and it just makes it a unique model.
When you say larger, are you anticipating any of them having more than 2 bedrooms or just larger square feet?
It would just be larger square feet. So it would be the
still
same
one
type of
resident
apartment,
or
but
two
more
residents.
square footage. You had asked about the units. It wouldn't be any different. So if we had 116 units, maybe 10% have couples. So, it would still be on the order of 116 residents plus maybe another 10%. But of course, there's always a vacancy rate as well.
I was thinking like a college quad, we're going to have 4 seniors.
No bunk beds. But it's
Just physically bigger apartments.
physically bigger apartments, which we see people want. People want more bathrooms, they want walk-in closets. So that's the type of thing we think we could provide here.
And a question, how are the 2 existing stone cottages, how do you access them? How do you drive to them?
Yeah, so, and we're still working through this, but currently, and this says fire access road, we believe we'll have to have a road back here, and this is a turnaround area. We would have to work through it, but basically having parking and a walkway here, and then obviously, this is at a retaining wall, so we'd have to do the same on this side as well.
Okay, so it's not shown yet, but it's
Yeah.
obviously you're going to figure that out. Okay. They're not just going to be there.
Right.
Stranded.
That's right.
Okay.
I just want to ask a question about the affordable housing. So I'm going back to our ordinance. It says 10% of a development. So if you're coming up with 116 units, how are you providing for 6 affordable instead of 10 at least?
Right, we have no dwelling units now, so it's assisted living, there won't be any kitchens. So it's a fully licensed assisted living building.
Yeah.
So it's 116 assisted living, and we no
Yeah.
longer have any independent living.
I'm still not okay with that. I mean, but
I think that's the way the code reads, you know,
Okay.
so that if it's not a dwelling unit, it's basically keeping the 6 affordable units
Right.
and preserving
Yeah.
those 3 cottages.
So we're correct. Exactly, that's right,
okay.
that's right.
Mariah, maybe that's something you and I can talk about some more. Just
Yeah,
so you
but
can.
the code, I mean.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm just.
But I'll talk to you about it later. You know, could you compare the surface parking, what you have proposed to what's there now?
What's there now?
Previous plan or compared to what's there now?
I think what's
I
there
guess
now.
both would be good.
It's a little bit different. This parking area is that first plateau when you drive into the site. It's modified slightly, but we tried to keep most of the parking within the area that's confined there right now, and it still has about the same number of parking spaces, which is 23. This parking area is the one that's actually interconnected right now. You see it where they're connected with the building immediately to the north. We did extend a little bit further down this hillside, but we actually think we could tighten this up and reduce the number of surface spots right now. We have a little bit over 50 on the plan as shown with the 46 spaces. We have a couple of extra parking spaces, so we're going to be able to tighten this up. But this parking is really in the area of that existing surface lot that's interconnected with the property to the north.
Is there any screening of that parking lot to the north, like now currently, or?
There's not, it's physically, you can drive from one to the next right now. So anything we would do would provide some screening there. If we can adjust this slightly and provide some landscaping in that area, we can certainly do that. That's what we had on the original plan as well.
Any questions?
Yeah, I had a number of them.
Okay.
I was just waiting for.
For permission?
No, I was waiting for everyone.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Shoot.
Yeah, so, I mean, like Brian, I'm very concerned about the view of that north wing. And, you know, summertime, wintertime, both, all-season view. And coming south on Broadway, most specifically. And I'm thinking that you're probably going to have to densify your landscaping and get some more larger evergreens in toward the front zone.
In this area here?
Yeah, especially off to the left of the you know, those are, yeah, you know, in that area. It's just going to be, I know that there's also a grade up there, right? There's going to be a hill up, so you're going to have to just be, go out there and do some, like you said, walk-arounds and figure out where the best screening beds are going to be. The only other comment about landscape is, generally speaking, moving trees are oftentimes, as you know, very
Dramatic.
often less successful than expected. And also, you know, it's well known from Cornell research that if you move a tree that's fairly, you know, larger caliber tree and dig it out, that it actually takes longer to recover than if you just planted a smaller caliber tree to begin with. And that within about 4 to 5 years, the smaller caliber tree will have caught up with the larger one, and the larger one will still be suffering. So it's really because of the amount of root damage when you get that root system in there to dig them out. It can be done, and if it's a really wonderful tree, a good specimen tree, unique, something historical about the tree, then it's probably worth the effort. Otherwise, I'd say you guys should just, it's nice, but probably just plant, you know.
That's fine.
Or offer someone to come in and take them and
Right.
get the
No, I think
headache
it's a good
themselves.
point. It might make more sense to,
I mean, I think the other thing about in the back, it's hard to see exactly where it's going to end up. I do think that in the current drawing, it's not clear how those before you had like 3 levels of terracing in the back. It's not clear what it's going to have to be. And I think that's going to be an interesting outcome to see how much you can protect of the woodland and sort of move that, still have the driveway there for the fire access.
Right.
I'm a little concerned about the cul-de-sac fire access. I'd be surprised if you didn't get a lot of pushback from the fire department about that particular thing. That's going to have to be probably bigger than you expect to allow large, the trucks to do full turns in.
Mm-hmm. It's
And,
got to meet the radius.
It's got minimum turning radius. And those are certainly some details we need to talk to them about. There's a number of opportunities to provide fire protection from the courtyard in the service area. So we're trying to look at that as secondary access to the back of the building.
Which is great unless you're in the back of the building, I suppose. And so then the other thing is really just the other strong reaction is just how this is going to look. Those 2 wings, how they. It's a lot of it's going to be architectural. How you actually blend the various styling, especially you've got now some interesting issues with the north face of the building and some of the ideas that you had before that were these variations and make it kind of look like a small urban street probably isn't going to work there anymore, especially because you've got the loading zone and you've got. So how it evolves is going to be really important to see how, if you can keep it from. This is the architectural magic to keep it so that it's integrated and yet not maybe keep some surprises in it. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So that it's visually interesting.
Right.
And some of what you were showing before, I guess what I'm trying to get at is some of the, and I know this is all preliminary, but to me, this going from here has a lot of kind of interesting, I know it's extended, but there's a lot of interesting depth with the colonnades and the insets and the, blah, blah. Here, once, it doesn't have that kind of visual play going on, I guess you'd say. And so I'm just a little bit concerned about whether this facade is going to just, I don't know. So some of that is just, I'd be interested in, I'm trying to think of how to say this, but to me, this rendering is a step backwards in terms of styling, but I don't know what it would be. It would be just one of those concerns that it'd be nice to see how all the pieces and the various angles with the new kind of T-square design, how that actually all comes together.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mark, and it's very preliminary. It's not nearly as developed as the previous elevation.
Yeah.
And we'll work with you guys with AOB on that as we move forward if we do.
Well, anyways, so I think there's a lot of possibility. I mean, the one other thought I had that I expressed when we were talking, but the only way, and I don't know what this means, and it's probably there's a lot of difficulty with the subsurface issues, but one of the things that happened with Continuum's plan was that when they actually redid it and they did the sunken level, it made almost like a quad, like the sense of a quad, or maybe it was a 3-sided quad, whatever that is, a quad with one building missing.
Trod.
No, whatever. So it made there was a kind of a sense of a yeah, except more so than that. I mean, it was like the whole focus of the structure was that kind of trying to think of the right words, like a little, like, a mini campus almost.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the only other way I could think of that you could break down the bulk of the buildings is to make them even feel more like separate buildings, even though they still have some connection now. I don't know what that means, except you probably couldn't have, 3 or 4 story, connectings between them. You'd do the connecting at a lower grade, and then, But that's just that's a much different approach to the architecture, and I'm not sure that you can get what you need into there.
Yeah, I think one of the things that might help us, this plan versus the previous one, is that this courtyard is 1 story higher than it was before.
Yeah.
So naturally, the buildings around it are 1 story lower. The other thing we were thinking about, Mark, was maybe this section of the building may want to slide in a little bit to separate it from the one in the front. So it reads more like
Yes,
one building
all
in
of
the front
that
and a
stuff
second building
would,
behind
all
it.
of that stuff would probably work. And the other, I mean, there are little touches like the 2 wings on the south, it's not clear why they should be different southern dimensions. I mean, it's stuck, one goes out a little bit further, maybe 20 feet more, 25 feet more than the
It
other.
does, right?
And it's like, is that going to work or not? I mean, these kind of visual things. Now, on the other hand, I just want to bring up that Connie really loved the idea of the conservatory, the glass house, on the what would appear to be the main building in the front.
Right.
So I think some of that kind of stuff too is very great in terms of just the, you know, giving a nod back to the Lord and Burnham and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah,
the
here-
great estates.
Here we're showing it on the side, but
Yeah.
again, it's all up for discussion.
If I could just interject, Mark, excuse me, because this is.
No, I'm done. I was just ranting because I wasn't sure how to say it.
The courtyard as it exists now has no parking, correct? Whereas in the previous design, the courtyard, if I'm correct, the courtyard was initially seen as simply a courtyard. Then you put some parking in there to relieve the parking, get some of the other parking out of sight. Now this again restores a courtyard area that will visually, I think, be a lot more attractive to people living there.
Isn't there some parking there? It looks like there's some handicap spaces.
Significantly reduced.
Yes.
The original plan had about 16, now there's 2 or 3 there.
I would just say, I mean, the difficult thing from my perspective is that you have to make decisions that, when it comes to this idea of smart development, that bring revenue and growth to the village. And I do think that the reduction in size is obviously appreciable. And thank you for that, because you definitely listened to us. I mean, to go from 165,000 square feet to 100,000 square feet, and you reworked your model to better fit the village. So that is appreciated. And also, within that vein, it does allay some concerns related to the potential impacts of the building and the facility. But if you're trying to get feedback from us, I can tell you, so I believe everything that I just said to you to be true, but it's still a big building. It's still a large facility, and I'm not 100% on board with bringing a facility of that size to the village. So I'm happy to see this new plan, and I guess it allows me to be somewhat more cautiously optimistic about it, but it doesn't totally sell me.
Fair enough.
The only one other thing I remembered, sorry, I just wanted to this might come out, sounded a little bit like browbeating, but because it's going to be an issue with the FEIS, I still don't see a public sidewalk. You guys are going to need it because of your workforce.
Right.
So I think really you guys got a plan, and if you're putting in the walls, well, you might as well take the hit now and assume that everyone from here through the planning board is going to be demanding better connectivity for, it probably will require even more than just that, because you can't just have an isolated sidewalk, but whatever that is, it's got to be really, we're going to keep coming back to it. Maybe right now detailitis, but it's an important detail.
If we're talking overall responses, Christina just did, I would just like to echo her appreciation for you guys really have rethought this, reworked this, redone this in response to the many concerns, that we had. Also, just to back up a step, I think what we all need to keep in mind is the village does not own this property. It is private property that the owner would like to sell. If it's not you guys, it's going to be something else there. And so I think our job is to decide what is best for the village overall and what is, what works best for the common good here. The things that appeal to me, the great reduction in size, makes this far more palatable to me. I like the advantages that it has always had, which is no impact on the schools, tax benefit, preserving the stone cottages both as historically significant and providing some affordable housing. And I agree, I'd like to see more, but I don't think we can ask you for more. So those are huge plus factors. This is a much more palatable project, and I am probably less cautiously optimistic than Christina that this could be something.
Less optimistic or less cautious?
Less cautious. More on the optimistic, a little bit less cautious. Although it's not like a done deal, but this is, and I don't think you meant to present a done deal or a very detailed plan to us tonight. You basically, I think, want from us, is this sufficiently on the right track? Because you've already put in a tremendous amount of time and effort. So I think what you want from us tonight is some
guidance on
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I'll piggyback this. My notes start off with this property is being sold, so I didn't remind anyone that we don't own it, but it's not, that's true also. But so to me, the status quo is not going to be there, and I think that that's what we have to remember as we're looking at this. And to me, the as of right use of building 6 or 7 homes would have a drastic effect on it as well. I mean, the stone buildings will be gone, the rolling lawns, all that's going to be gone. The preliminary drawings I saw of it, it's, the roadway going up there is strange. It's just, it's a strange piece of property. So I'm not, that to me isn't a slam dunk. This is going to be, that'd be great use. Everyone's going to be happy with that either. So I think it would drastically affect the view of Broadway also. So where can we get? Can we get something that's similar, that preserves kind of that open space feel that people call the gateway to Irvington, while still balancing, I personally don't want to be in office when we become Dobbs Ferry or Tarrytown that just seems to build on every piece of property as much as they can. So I'm very happy that you were able to cut it by 60%. I frankly never thought you'd come anywhere close to that. I'm sorry, you cut it by 40% down to 60% of the original size. But kind of somewhere in between Janice and literally, I'm perhaps optimistic as opposed to cautiously or not. I think that I like the fact that the front part of the building is the same width, because to me the width of the original proposal was just, I felt like we were parking, the Intrepid there or something. So maybe now we just have a destroyer, but we have a destroyer there now. I think it's, to me, coming forward makes it seem, even if it's the same height, it seems taller because it's closer to you. And I think the back piece being as wide as it is, if it was completely buried like some kind of Hobbit home, I wouldn't probably mind, but I can't imagine that that's going to be the plan, because I don't think seniors like the Hobbit that much, to be quite honest. But it's, I think that I don't want to just say, it's big and leave town, because I don't know what's coming next. And if we can have you guys, come up with something that isn't going to change the appearance much from Broadway, I'm fairly optimistic that the impacts, schools, obviously there's none, but some of the other things, traffic, I think anything we build there is going to have traffic impacts. I don't think this is a particularly high traffic impact. I think it would have been, if they had this completely full of commercial space right now, it would be a lot higher. So it would be an improvement. It happens to be pretty much empty now, so it will be potentially an increase. And I think getting some affordable housing, keeping the buildings, all those things are great. So that's why I don't want to just, kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater here. But there's still a part of me that says, is it still too big? And I unfortunately, I can't say definitively either way. I'd say this is obviously a 40% step in the right direction. I think that the not crowding the outbuildings is important, because, again, when you have the Intrepid parked out your front door and you're staring into a cafeteria, it didn't really seem like a great place to live, and I think that we want those to be great places to live. So I think that you guys have tweaked it a lot. I don't know how much more you can tweak, but to me, I still need some more tweaking. It's hard for me. I'm not an architect, I'm not an engineer. Again, I didn't even realize how big it was until I went out onto the property and walked around. So for me to look at the building, and the fact that I'm looking at it now and going, I'm concerned about the back piece of it, kind of raises the alarm bells for me, because I don't have a good eye for this type of stuff. But I think that, again, I know this is really conceptual, moving towards, being smaller for us. So I'm not sure if I told you anything in my 5-minute rambling.
Well,
but
you know,
If I can just paraphrase, I think what you're saying is that it's difficult for us to really see it. You know,
Right.
we see the drawings, we read the summary of the changes, those are all extremely positive. And without asking you to commit, like, you know, go through every possible detail at this point, but can you do something like that, drive around?
Yeah, well, so,
You know, like
I guess what's difficult for us is to keep going down a path and doing the drive around, it's thousands and thousands of dollars.
Okay,
You know,
I see where
and
the cost-
I guess our concern is, we've been at this for over a
Sure.
year.
Sure.
We've spent a lot of money, and in fact, in all of my time at Brightview, I've never been in this position, to be this far into something and not know where we stand. And so, you know, and so, the challenge we have is just sort of, where do we go from here? Because when you talk about tweaks, this model, this is it. This is it.
Well,
It's
how
a
about
different
just,
model, and we're not gonna, you know, the 60% isn't going to go down another 50% or whatever. And so, if it really is too big, we would rather just know, and we would leave town. We love this project. We'd love to do this. We think this model makes sense. We think it's a great use of the property. I mean, now, of course, we can make adjustments to the architecture and do things related to the site and landscaping. We can do all that. The building, in essence, is the building. So I just want to make sure
it's
that's
like take
clear.
it or leave it. Either we accept the building as we're presenting it, or it's.
Well, with tweaks, I guess, you know, you mentioned tweaks. This 100,000 square feet, it's going to be about 100,000 square feet. And so whether, you know, and I mean, my belief on it is, given the site layout, the back, this is the area to have the longer bar, the mass of the building going into the hill, and having the smaller part along the front. This doesn't tell a great story because it's in plan view. It seems like the right approach, but my only point is that is the square footage. So by no means am I saying take it or leave it. We've been working together on this now for a very long time. I think we've come a very long way with just the concepts with the affordable housing and the layout and everything, but
So can
that's
you,
not-
I think what we need one more thing, at least. We need some renderings. I could live without a complete drive around, but I think certainly some key renderings. You've heard the major concern. The major concern is effectively the view coming, I think, coming south
on Broadway.
So the view looking in to the northern side of the site. That's probably the big, I don't want to minimize all the other kinds of issues, because, but I think that's probably going to be
Right.
the big rendering. And I think that's going to make people, I mean, you can't just put a tree up in the middle of it and say, okay, we block the view.
Understood. Oh, and we can do this, a
I
very
know.
similar rendering to what you've
Yeah.
seen on the, you know, from Broadway. We can prepare that. It's just, you
Yeah,
know.
I think it's even something like this, like the bottom
Yeah.
one here, but with whatever's behind it, whatever you can see behind it.
Yeah, and the actual perspective view,
Could we also do another site visit?
I was gonna ask-
Maybe that wouldn't cost so much, and I didn't mean to suggest the most
Yeah.
expensive option. but it's-
Probably, we have to have it.
Why don't we go visit?
We had something
we should absolutely do
Stake
that.
it out.
with heights, what we've done in the past is you balloons, you float a balloon, a height.
Yeah.
Well, we know what the white building is.
Yeah,
so it's-
exactly, or use that as a frame of reference.
I mean, if you're saying that,
Sidewalk would be helpful in this.
Yes.
It might be, yeah.
especially for the back quadrant, I think that's the
Yeah,
key.
we're happy to do it, absolutely.
And if you have like markers showing us where the actual width of the building is, and if you can give us some, I think we have a better appreciation of height there. Again, I'm not suggesting you do the most expensive option,
Right.
just we need.
I think it's a great way to do it. Just visit the site and stand there and, yeah.
Because that was honestly, when we saw the initial drawings and the renderings and even the drive around, I couldn't have a sense of how big or how small it was.
Correct. And the sidewalk can be helpful, and we can, in the time, develop the grading plan a little bit further so you understand how this is being stepped, because again, at a sketch plan level, all those details haven't been worked out yet. So a little bit more developed grading, just to understand what the elevation of this corner is relative to the roadway.
What
so
about
you know what you're gonna see.
Just check the weather report before
Oh,
we
Yeah,
schedule.
yeah, we would obviously like to do it
Yep.
sooner rather than
But not in the
later.
blend, okay.
So, and a rendering at all? or-
Yeah, what we could do is very similar rendering to what we had done from the street view.
I think that would just be
Looking up
helpful
Broadway,
because-
we could have that at the same time that we do the site walk. I guess our point is, Those are absolutely the types of things we'd like to do. What we don't want to do is launch into an FEIS and get 3 to 6 months.
I wouldn't do that.
Right,
Yeah,
no.
no.
That's the,
We
no
don't
one
want
wants
to do
that.
that.
No,
It just doesn't make sense for anybody.
Of course not.
So,
Yeah.
but that, otherwise, it's, I think, a good idea.
Let's see if we go back and say instead, oh my God, this is so enormous, that this doesn't seem so big this time. I mean, there's always a chance, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it would be interesting just because we could see the existing parking on the site and get a
Yeah,
sense
I
of
can't-
how
I don't
that
have a sense.
changes.
I know that I have a sense of the lower one, but I don't have a sense of the side one right now.
Yeah, because I was ignored.
Services.
Okay.
Yeah, thoughts?
Okay.
I think, so I think we're gonna open up to public comment.
Okay.
Just, I think that's,
Did you want to try to, can you guys come up with a date? Because it gets so hard to do these setup times long distance.
I think that's a great idea.
So,
Well, how much time do you need? Not
Yeah, well,
with us, but.
they-
We could do it 1 week? 2 weeks?
Are we going for a sidewalk or for a rendering?
Both.
well,
We're trying to
do
do
it at the
both,
same time.
Yeah.
And the sidewalk, a rendering, and a slightly more advanced grading plan. I think that was what was being offered.
Okay, we were in two different conversations, so we
We'll
missed that.
stake the corners, each of the corners of the building, so you can.
With where you can.
With elevations on where it is up or down.
I don't know what your calendar's looking
Oh, I'm
like.
sorry, I
I'm
didn't-
suggesting, if it's not late next week, perhaps the week of the 7th. If that's-
That's much better.
Week of the 7th.
Yeah, it's much better. Also, it's going to get stay light later, so for people who are commuting, that might be a little bit easier.
Do you do it before the meeting on the 7th?
Yeah, that seems
Yeah, what
obvious.
about that? What about before the meeting on the 7th?
The board has a meeting on March 7th.
Well, we'll do that
If you
then.
can.
That'll be our target date.
That'd be great, because then we could,
And then you can have the elevations to show us at the meeting. You'll
Yes.
have done the
How early
sidewalk.
are we talking?
5:30 maybe?
5:30?
Yeah. I could try that.
5:30 on which day was it?
The
7th.
March 7th.
Andrew, and then.
would that be, am I putting that in? Are we putting that in?
Yes, I mean, you guys can obviously confirm if you can't do it.
Yeah, 7th, 5:30.
I know Steinmetz shows up early.
5:30 PM.
I think 5:30 p.m.
PM, yeah.
Why not do 8 p.m.? Why are you doing it? Definitely.
You're ignoring me tonight.
But we can have all that.
Okay, so,
Good,
Thank you.
thank you.
I guess it's time for public comment anyway, so public comment on this first and then anything else after this. How's that? Who'd like to lead off? She's up first.
Hi, Jean McLaughlin. I live on Meadowbrook Road. I'm right across from Brightview, I guess. A couple of questions. I know you said that traffic won't be a problem, but I'm not so sure on that. I don't feel comfortable with that. I can't get out of our road in the morning to take the kids to school.
I'm not saying traffic's not going to be worse because this goes in. I'm saying compared to what, like, another proposal we have is 190 unit.
I know,
Yeah,
it's
so-
a little less, but I don't really believe you.
Okay, yeah, well.
Sorry.
All right.
The other thing is, I still feel like it looks like it's gonna be looming over Broadway. I mean, I know you said coming south, but even head on, it looks like it's a very big structure still. The other thing is, one concern I've heard from people and talking to people is, what if this does not take off? It does not get occupied and Brightview down the road, 5 years, 10 years, sells it? What happens to that? Does that then become apartments? Does that become a hotel? I mean, how does that get rezoned then?
Brian, if I could just say,
Sure.
this question was asked before, so that'll have to be addressed in the DEIS. Like Brian said, the questions to, and the traffic, that'll be addressed in the DEIS. Those questions were asked in the public hearing. The point, I think, in the public comment tonight was just on the size
That's
of it.
okay.
As you
I
said,
got the
Like
microphone now.
Yeah,
Got the
sure,
microphone.
sure.
Because I email and no one emails back, so I don't even know if you guys even receive our emails with questions.
No, any email, just so you know, that all of the emails that were sent on the DEIS that would have sent before the public hearing were passed on to Brightview, and they have to answer it in the DEIS.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
I mean, the other thing too, people on Meadowbrook and Fargo and Sunnyside and the other private homes on Broadway are concerned that this is gonna decrease our value of our homes. That's a big concern also.
Okay.
Any comment on?
I mean, again, compared to what's coming next, I mean, I think that's the big question. Again, the true wisdom I can give you is the property is being sold, so it's not gonna stay the way it was. And if you go back to the 70s, there were 350 people working there every day, so it depends on when you were there. If I could have it be exactly the same way it is today,
I've been
I'd be very
there
happy.
for 22 years,
So,
so I see a lot of changes, so,
Sure.
so.
I mean, and this is gonna be another change. I don't know what's gonna be there yet, but that's what we're trying to figure out with your input. So, the thing we like about this, again, is they're gonna preserve the outbuildings. It's not gonna have a lot of impact on schools. There's definitely positives to this. The big concern is that it's a giant building. And, that's my biggest concern, that it's a building unlike any other building in Irvington. This one's now 40% more like other buildings in Irvington as opposed to 4%, which was their last reduction. But is that enough? I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Please. Sorry, Peter. You're next.
Lou Macchiato, I've been representing the Rabies. We did make a decision tonight what we have to do about the environmental impact statement. We didn't decide whether, because this is so different, there has to be a supplemental EIS. We didn't make that decision tonight, all did we?
I don't even know, we haven't decided that we're even going forward with anything. Yeah.
Right, because I mean, we talked about, 3 to 6 months.
Yes.
116 assisted, no memory care.
No, there's memory care.
Memory care is part of it.
26.
Is that it?
26.
Included within it? Sorry, there is some memory care. Within the 116?
Yeah, it's 90 assisted living and 26 memory care.
Oh, okay. And this matters, but the staffing might be more intense in this building than when you had 85 independent living?
Do you guys?
Yeah.
No,
I think so. Yeah. Staffing went up. Staffing went up. Yeah. Like, the item, for one resident, I don't know whether it's appropriate, but one of the things that the EAS scoping said, we really care what it looks like from 20 Strawberry Lane, was right. So, at some point, we'd like to still look at that and make sure that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think tonight was really, this project was dead in the water after the last meeting.
Yeah, I thought so.
And I think now they're coming back with a fairly dramatic reduction in size. We're saying, is this enough? And I think that I can't answer that question for myself, never mind for the village. So I think that's kind of the purpose of tonight. Is this a restart or not? So,
Thanks.
sure. Peter?
Thank you, Peter Bernstein, 17 North Cotonet. Could someone tell me what the difference between the setback is from the current building to this new building? This is 300 feet off Broadway, and what's the current white building back from Broadway?
420.
Thank you, so it's about 100 feet closer. Yeah. I just, wanted to say, hang tough, I think you're hanging tough, you're paying close attention, and as my new committee, I would say, Christina, hang tough on the 10%, even, they can build a couple of kitchens if you want them to.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Still Kristen Wall, 58 West Clinton Avenue. What is the current status of the Harrison application and the Pleasantville applications?
I don't know. Why is that relevant?
Here.
Well, it goes to overexpansion. Do you know, or I'm not sure who to ask. Shelter Corp for Brightview has 2 applications out, one in Harrison, one in Pleasantville.
Mr. Chair, if you want us to answer, we're always happy to answer. It's not relevant to tonight, but I'm happy to answer. They're both, it's a matter of public
If you
record.
have a very short answer.
Chris, do you want an answer?
I'd love an answer.
So, very briefly, because Chris asked, there is no application pending in
Pleasantville. It was withdrawn probably about a year ago, and there is a matter pending before the town of Harrison for a different facility, also by Brightview. It's 160 units. It is a rezoning, and it is kind of on the final lap of the approvals there.
Thank you.
And both applications are independent of one another, and Brightview is very well aware that both are pending at the exact same time.
Okay, so the Harrison one,
Really, Chris, I'm happy.
Oh, sorry. I just don't know if they know. And the Pleasantville one, I thought went before their board March 2015.
15 or 16?
2015.
A year ago.
And it was withdrawn then? I thought that,
Yes.
okay. So that's withdrawn.
Yes.
That's not happening. Okay, because that does go to what another neighbor was mentioning about what happens if it's not well filled and is it repurposed. And then also I had a question about on the larger apartments. What's the price point here? Because that's something else we talk about here in Irvington about luxury housing versus affordable housing. Oh, sorry, the board, I have to ask the board.
Yeah, can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
I don't know if she wants to get all the questions out there, I'm happy to come back and respond in terms of how, addressing the board as opposed to.
We're happy to meet with her offline. We talked tonight for design, which was what we were asking.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
Okay.
we want to answer as many questions as we can, but I think we want to kind of keep, we don't even know if we're touching off here. I think that's literally after the last meeting, I think we all thought it was done.
Yeah.
They came back with a radically different approach. We're not sure, I'm not sure personally, I think the board doesn't know if we're going to be going forward. If we go forward, we're going to ask, a lot more questions. This is just conceptually, can we even go forward? I think, so we're kind of set back, so.
I see what you're saying. Okay, then my comment would be, it is a nice design, but I agree that's still about 50% too big. Yeah, maybe 50,000 square feet would work. 100,000 looks a little big still. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just had a quick question. This brings up, what's the existing square footage of the white building? Does anyone remember?
Approximately 33,000 square feet.
Total, all the floors?
The white building, yes.
Okay, because I would have to go back to the DEIS to find that number.
Off the top, yeah. It's in that 30 range. 35.
33.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Anybody have public comment on something?
Hi, Sheila Crook, 15 Meadowbrook Road. Well, I feel like it's still too big. I feel all of the concern are the same as it was before. It doesn't impress me for the future quality of our life in this town. And I think all of these meetings before, the voices were, the village voices were here to tell you our opinion. And I think, and I hope you will hear them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody have public comment on something not related to Brightview? Then we're just going to action on that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really, thank you again for, because like Brian said, I was quite astonished when I saw it go down as much as it did. So, yeah, thank you very much. And you definitely are, you made it clear that you're willing to work with us.
Yeah. Sidewalk, head in the water, but down, we'll do lights preserved with some air in them.
You say that. You say that. We're looking for orange floaty things.
Lincoln Lights has snorkels at least.
You have action items?
The only one was to follow up with the chief about the stolen items.
Yes, that's the only one I had. I don't know if anybody else had any other follow-ups?
I did forward that email. Or it had come into us like a board and I forwarded it to you, but.
I forwarded it to the chief at Goffstown. And I forwarded it to somebody else at Goffstown. Okay. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
It's probably in your.
So I'll make a motion to adjourn the executive session regarding personnel. Can I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Good night, folks, thank you.